so that you've got plenty of, your blood plasma is very dilute and all that, because you're not going to drink again for the next 3 hours probably. And especially if you, yeah, go ahead.
A good way to mineralize your water is brown rice. Just put a teaspoon of brown rice in there.
Okay.
And it'll put a nice current in your water. Really good minerals.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard about that.
Just a pinch of it or something.
Yeah, like a little small teaspoon. And it's pennies on on the dollar.
And do you leave it in there, or you just stir it and then drink it right away?
No, just let it sit for
Just
a
let it
while
sit?
and
Okay.
stir it.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea, because there are vegetables, and I actually would imagine you could do that with most vegetables.
Fruits, vegetables.
Yeah. They all have minerals in them. Plants are sort of like mineral extraction machines from the soil. So
Because a lot of times when we're just drinking like water from the tap, or it's depleting minerals. It's grabbing on.
I can feel it now. And I've been on the 5-gallon filtered water long enough that as soon as I drink tap water, I can, like, as it's going down, I can feel it pulling water away from me, because it's got more concentrate than maybe my cells do. I can feel myself being dehydrated by the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, like straight out of my mouth. I can, the chlorine, all the chemicals, all the minerals, I can just feel it.
I have a reverse osmosis, so I understand that it does take out some minerals. So that brown rice, that would.
The other thing is, you'll notice this thing is made of glass. Like, I'm sort of defeating the purpose by having that thing be plastic, but glass is healthier for you than plastics.
Do they make these in glass or BPA free?
They do, but they're like almost like antiques now. They're very hard to find, just because they're so heavy.
Do they make a BPA free one?
They claim so, but I just don't know. Like, I don't know enough about the chemistry of it. All I know is I was in a PhD program with these toxicologists, and I used to have my little Nalgene thing, and they'd be like, that has artificial estrogens in it. Like, that's what they always used to tell me. And so, like, I was like, okay, I'll start looking into it. So what I started doing is I started doing more, like, glass work. And the other thing I'll mention about the acid stuff is this is a really good way to increase the acid of your stomach when you're eating vinegars. And our first activity will actually be making kombucha, which is another way of making vinegar, and it's much cheaper than this. And it's about half as stout. Like, this is 5% acidity. I would say the kombucha is like 2.5% if you let it really, really brew a long time. But some people will just actually shoot this as like a drink at the end of a meal or at the beginning of a meal. I like to make dressings out of it. So the food that we'll prepare today, I'll have like a dressing for you to look at. And I've got a really cool way of making a dressing and yet also having, like, creating a superfood out of some stuff that otherwise would have gone bad. I think you'll be intrigued by this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that I've heard that apple cider is a natural preservative for stuff.
An aunt of mine takes a shot of it, and her skin is incredibly clear.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny you should say so, because naturopathic practitioners like Dr. Gonzalez Stewart, he always tells people skin problems are a result of liver problems. Like, if your liver is struggling, you'll have some sort of a skin issue. And I don't know the mechanism exactly, but acid things like kombucha, sauerkraut, apple cider vinegar, even kefir are all supposed to be liver aids. And I can tell you the mechanism by which they think that the kombucha is. But first we'll sort of play with the kombucha, and then afterwards we'll talk a little bit more about it. So that's so far we've done dehydration and we've talked about water. What about the other forms of food preservation like kombucha? Okay. Does anybody know what kombucha is? That's it, by the way, those little things. Okay, so what kombucha is, it's really cool. It is a fabric that forms on the surface of fermenting tea. And it's actually the thing that is fermenting the tea. So if you make sweet tea, like green tea, like right here what I've done is I've boiled some water and I've put 8 green tea bags in here. and I'm letting them steep for a little while. Yeah, it does. And the reason I did 8 bags is because we're going to make 4 batches of kombucha. So I do 2 bags per kombucha batch. Some people do 4. They make it stronger. I have problems with caffeine, and so I keep it dilute like that. But the kombucha does need the tannins and the tea to help them. By the way, here's a little side note. You know how to make decaffeinated tea? This is crazy. Okay. Turns out that caffeine is one of the most water-soluble of all the things in the tea. So boil water, put the water in 2 teacups. Put your tea bag in one of the teacups for 30 seconds. Take it out and put it in the second one. Almost all the caffeine's in the first one. You can pour that out or whatever. So you can drastically reduce anyway the caffeine content by double brewing, and you're not losing too many of the good things that are in the tea that way. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's sort of like decanting, but it's separating like through time due to solubility of the chemical. So anyway, that's what we're going to do is we're going to make some kombucha, and I was going to ask, it looks like I have at least 4 kombucha pads. So is anybody interested in taking a pad home with them? Okay, you want one?
I'll take one.
You want one? Okay, so you like, and if we have more pads, then I can make them available to you. I want to start with this because this one, well, this one is, of all the things I ferment, this is the one you have to be the most careful with in terms of cleanliness. Something like kefir that we'll talk about later, which is a fermented, it's like a yogurt type thing. This stuff is so aggressive that you don't have to worry about contamination. This always wins over anything that would come in there. Sauerkraut, every once in a while you hear like a little burp. I've got sauerkraut brewing in that thing right now, and it's going very, very quickly.
Carbon dioxide.
It's carbon dioxide bubbles.
Bubbles out.
Yeah, yeah. I'll show you just what. Let me just reach back. This. I was gonna make it with you guys, and I realized it could take all day. And so I timed it yesterday. It only took an hour, but basically what that crock is it's 7.5 liters, and I put 2.5 cabbages, purple cabbages in it. And there's 2 semicircle stones that rest on top of the cabbage. And then you make sure there's enough water that even the stones are underwater. And then in the top, there's a moat, and you fill that with water. So it's a seal that's hydraulic. So it will let air out, and it will let air in, just depending on like how different the pressure is. So as you hear that thing bubble today, what's happening is the little bacteria that are making the sauerkraut are basically breathing out carbon dioxide, and it gets enough that like every once in a while it forces out from under the moat. They say to leave it in there for like 3 or even 6 weeks. I have found that it tastes perfectly good at 5 days. Like that's really, I would say 90% of it happens in 5 days. And it ends up being this. And I'll pass it around so you can smell it. This stuff is strong. And what I do, here's the recipe, okay? So 2.5 cabbages, 5 cloves of garlic, and 1 onion about this size, like the medium size. I'd say 5. It just depends on how much you like garlic. Some people put ginger, some people put beets, some people put carrots. It's fun to experiment, but like my solid recipe is 2.5 cabbages, 5 cloves of garlic, 1 onion, and I like to use the purple cabbage because it turns out that the pigment that makes purple cabbage purple is actually a pH indicator. So as it gets more and more acidic, it turns more and more pink. So like when I started this, like the stuff that's in there right now is very deep purple. It looks like a blueberry. But within 5 days, it'll be pink. And this stuff is strong. get ready when you pass that around.
I can smell it from here.
Yeah.
What's the name of the cabbage storage container?
This thing is called a Gartop. It's a German name. Gartopf.
Okay.
And it's the original system by Harsch. Harsch is the company. Harsch. So don't worry, like when we make our food today, I'll give you the choice of whether or not you want sauerkraut. Because some people like it, some people don't. I do too. Like my mother and I, it may be our blood type or something, but like my mother and I love sauerkraut. Like I have to, when my mother comes, I have to make extra. Because she'll just sit there, you know, and I'll be like, hey, do you want some salad with your sauerkraut? Because like it'll be mostly sauerkraut and a couple of green leaves. I'm not that bad, but I do love it.
And what's the health benefit of sauerkraut?
Okay, great question. So with all of these acidic foods, the health benefit is that it increases the stomach acid in your stomach. It helps you with digestion. But also, it creates what's called a I look like James Bond.
Yeah, exactly.
You know how people pay big money for probiotic bacteria? Okay, like for instance, I emptied 3 of these little probiotic pills in with that just to get it started going faster. Truthfully, there's enough bacteria on the leaves of cabbage itself to do the job, but this will really make it go fast if you put some of this in here. And the primary player is someone called Lactobacillus plantarum, and there is some in that. It literally, what's so cool about it, it is a symbiont that just sits and lives on the leaves of cabbage and waits for the cabbage to die. And then when the cabbage finally dies, boom, it just starts proliferating. So anyway, with all of this stuff is pertaining to probiotics. So what is a probiotic? It is the bacteria that lines your gut. Like there's something like 5,000 different species of bacteria, and there's like a couple pounds worth of it living in your gut if you're a healthy person. And many people don't know this. This is an interesting little part of our lesson today, is that we've got, we oftentimes think that our body ends here with our skin. And we forget that, oh, well, we have to drink water and pee out water and eat food and poop out the excess. Well, it also turns out that part of our body is this stuff that lives in our gut. It's almost like a prosthetic organ. And if you give yourselves too many antibiotics, you can destroy that organ. Well, how is it an organ? Well, those bacteria help in a couple of ways. Number one, they're able to digest certain things that you're not able to. So they make your digestion more efficient. But also, the number one way that you are exposed to disease is your gut. Like, we think of it as our skin, but our skin is actually really resistant to penetration, okay? Your gut and your lungs are meant to absorb stuff. So basically most of your immune system cells lie perched immediately around your gut. And it's because if something comes in that's inappropriate for your biology, it can launch an attack immediately before it systemically infects you. Well, here's where the probiotics come in. It turns out that because your gut is like this constant flow of stuff, your body doesn't try to stop the flow because otherwise it would starve. Instead, what your body does is it allows a flow but has a filter called an immune system that attacks the bad stuff and lets the good stuff through. And what's in the gut is constantly communicating with what's on the other side of the gut, the attackers that would the parts of your immune system. So if you get, say, systemic candida, where you have no bacteria in your gut anymore, you're full of yeast, your immune system knows there's trouble, and it starts to react. And there's all these inflammatory disorders that are related to things like inappropriate gut ecosystems. And it's just because your gut is entirely trained by and maintained by the stuff that's in it. Like your immune system is maintained by and trained by the stuff that's in the gut. So